All right, guys, we should be good to go. But yeah, welcome back. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. Good weekend to be a Celtics fan. But we'll jump in here, guys. Quick look at the futures. S&P 500 is flat. The QQQ futures are flat. The Dow Jones futures flat, and the Russell 2000 futures are flat as well. But I think the major level to watch here today, I think you can just anchor to the S&Ps. The S&Ps rally, everything else should rally. If the S&Ps fall apart, everything should fall apart. So I think the key level to watch here today is going to be that 4,000 level on the S&P futures. And if you're going to be trading the SPX, pretty much your 4,000 level. Keep in mind the overall structure of the market, is certainly really bearish. If we look at a weekly chart of something like the S&P 500, for example, let's keep in mind we're coiled up here in a bearish weekly squeeze. And we look at this weekly squeeze as bearish because there's no stacked EMAs. There's a negative histogram. So momentum is in favor of the bears, and we're under the weekly 21. We've gone from about 4,800 down to 4K. So that's about a 20% pullback. But in terms of the structure of the squeeze, this is still building up energy, hasn't even fired short yet. So it's not to say it has to fire short, it's just to say if it does, we're definitely going to see a lot more downside. The same thing could be said for a name like Apple, where Apple goes 180 plus down to 140, but you're still coiled up in a weekly squeeze. That fires short, there could be 5, 6, maybe 10 weeks of momentum to the downside. Same thing here for a name like a Tesla, same thing for a name like a Google. So keep in mind, our weekly charts are, they've already lost structure. Now we've entered that consolidation phase, but it's all leaning a bit bearish. Then I think if you look at a monthly chart of the S&Ps, here's where you see an even more important shift, is we're now trading under the monthly 21 EMA with red 10x bars. So for some context, we haven't traded under the monthly 21 since COVID, back in early 2020. But these are things you guys know. I just say this to say, if we do happen to get a short-term pop this week, ideally back towards these daily 21 EMAs, I think we still want to short those bounces. You don't have to be the first one to short it. You can wait for a rejection, but I do think we want to work that idea of shorting the bounces so long as we're under that weekly 21 EMA, with the idea that these bounces will get rejected, and eventually this weekly squeeze fires short, takes the overall market much lower. So that's kind of the bigger picture here in terms of the next 24 to 72 hours. If they can hold above 4K, I do think just based on the current positioning in the market with a lot of people leaning short, we could get a decent little short squeeze pop. But again, my mindset would be to short that bounce. So whether that be in the S&Ps, I'd like to short Apple. There's a lot of things, guys, I'd like to short. But in terms of getting better entries, where we can sell a call credit spread or we can buy a put debit spread and actually get a good bang for our buck, we do want to do that on the bounces. So I think the bearish side of things is pretty straightforward. In terms of where we could be looking for some exposure to the upside, got a few things for y'all here. And a lot of this is the same in terms of what's been looking good to the upside for the last 2 to 3 months, call it. You got crude oil here in a nice daily squeeze. We've got the stacked DMAs. We have buy signals here on a daily chart. Not quite on the 4-hour. But we do have the early buy signals here on the 2-hour time frame and on the 1-hour chart. So kind of a quick, little bit of a primer in terms of what that means. Because I spent all weekend working on this. When we get the daily buy signals, it means both the weekly chart and the daily chart are starting to line up as far as the trend, structure, momentum. So we can't get a daily buy signal unless the weekly chart is lining up. In terms of getting a buy signal on a 2-hour chart, this means both the 2-hour and the 4-hour, right, the time frame on top of it, are lining up with good trend, structure, momentum. To get a 1 hour buy signal, this means now your 1 hour and your 2 hour, right, the time frame on top of it, are lining up as far as trend structure momentum. So what we'll notice is, if you look at the push that you had back here, actually we can kind of do this, clean this all up. If you look back at crude earlier in the year, when it made that solid push, what we're looking for, guys, is buy signals on as many time frames as possible. So back here earlier this year, you've got them on the daily, right? But throughout the duration of that push, you've got them on the 4-hour chart. For the duration of that push, you've got them on the 2-hour chart. So when you get something in a general uptrend, then it goes into a daily squeeze, and then we start to see buy signals from the top to the bottom, gearing up for a good push. So I think crude oil is setting up pretty nice here, guys. If you look at USO, is US oil, very much the same thing. Now, this has had buy signals on the daily chart since January. But here we are in a daily squeeze. If we take it down to the 4-hour chart, you got a 4-hour squeeze. So USO is looking pretty good. I think you're looking for a push here into about 85 or so. Typically, guys, just looking for that push into about 2 ATR. So crude oil, USO, and then one that we have a little bit of is UNG, natural gas. So if we have the daily buy signals, you get the arrows on the daily chart, that means my weekly and my daily, they are firing on all cylinders. So you look at a 2-hour chart. Right. Nothing here just yet, but I want to wait for that moment in time where I can look at a daily and take it all the way down to my 5-minute chart, my 15-minute chart, and we're printing buy signals left and right. That's when you got to move, you can play. So we got some, let me think. Yeah, we got some June expiration longs here on the natural gas. And as always, any move into 29.30, that'll be good enough for us. All right, so crude oil, USO, UNG, then a few more for you good people here. Coca-Cola. Starting to get pretty interesting. We've got the daily setting up. We have got, let me see here, 2-hour squeeze and a 4-hour squeeze with some early buy signals. So compare this, to compare that to like 90% of the things in the market. This holds up really well. So if we're going to get a 2 to 3 to 4 day short squeeze, you're going to basically see everything rally, even the junk. But you should look for something that's held really good structure. To put in a nice move, the market kind of has the green light to trade higher for a few days. So I think Coca-Cola you keep an eye on. I think General Mills, GIS. I don't think I want to buy it up here, but I would buy that on the dip. And then we have got Kraft Heinz, KHC. And then I do think you want to focus on energy as well, guys. Right? So like I mentioned, a lot of this is the same stuff. XLE's got some early buy signals. I think the best looking name in here, probably something like an Oxy. So there's where we got a little bit of good trend and structure, guys. UNG, crude oil / USO, Coca-Cola, General Mills, Kraft Heinz. And we've got a few more on the watch list. Wheat looks really bullish here. Wheat's had buy signals since February. So wheat looks like it's good for a pullback by even corn. Keep in mind, it's a little extended. If you look at a weekly chart, little bit extended, but for a shorter term pop. Nice daily squeeze. Let me see. Got a 4-hour squeeze setting up. So there's a few for you guys. Again, my expectation today is if we can hold above 4K, I think there's a little bit of potential, at least into Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, to get a bit of a pop here. Keep in mind, Friday is going to be monthly expiration. So that's where things get interesting. Few different ways that could play out. For example, maybe into this Friday's monthly expiration, they want to make sure that anybody holding the 4,000 puts on the SPX gets crushed. So you might see the powers that be, so to say, you might see them a little bit hell-bent on the market closing above 4,000. Another way you could look at things is we rally for a few days, then they flush it into Friday, making sure anybody who bought calls watches those calls expire worthless. Or it could be a chop fest. Always got to consider that third alternative. That's what I'm looking for, guys. If we could get a few decent days of upside here, that I think is the bounce that we can put some shorts on into. Structuring shorts into probably June, July expiration. But for now, we got some UNG in the options room and the mastery. We've also got some unbalanced put butterflies in the mastery. There's some center strikes at 3,900. And we got a short going on Mickey D's. I heard McDonald's pulled out of Russia this morning, so have to see if that shakes the tree. But that is what I got for you guys. I do got to be in the options room here in about 15 minutes. But if you got anything you want to take a look at, put it in the chat here, and we'll bang out as many as we can. Good crowd here this morning. Hey, good morning, Sean. Yeah, Wilkin. I mean, here's the thing about the Apple short. Right? And you could look at a daily chart and say, okay, it's a bit oversold. And I kind of think the same thing, right? I would like a better entry. I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like to short it around 155. But in terms of wanting to pursue a short here, with the thinking there's going to be more downside, that's going to be my game plan until this weekly chart changes structure. So to avoid this weekly squeeze firing short, Apple's got some work to do here. Apple would have to rally back above that weekly 21 and then close back above that 21. And even that doesn't necessarily get it completely out of the woods. But I do think the weekly charts, guys, offer a good perspective. Where if you're looking at a daily chart on Apple, it's like, holy crap, this thing's gotten creamed. But to think that Apple can't trade lower from here, just in terms of the chart that we're looking at, it's pretty much the same thought process as we're back here. We're in a bullish weekly squeeze, and we're thinking Apple can't trade any higher. The weekly squeeze typically begs to differ. So I'm with you on that one, Wilkin. I am with you. Yeah, Fly Guy, we for the simpler members on Saturday, we did a class going over like some of the basic indicators. We went over the squeeze, we went over the 10x bars. So these are the 10x bars. Still got those on the chart. For those of you unfamiliar with the 10x bars, if they're green, the bulls are in control. If they're red, the bears are in control. And if it's yellow, it's all a little bit sloppy. A little bit sloppy. Hey, good morning, Lisa. Could I look at NVIDIA? Absolutely. When I look at NVIDIA, I'm going to look at it the same way I'm looking at the overall market. The same way I would look at something like an Apple. And keep in mind, guys, for my style of trading, for my game plan, a huge part of that game plan is I really can't get bullish on the stock if we're under the weekly 21 EMA. Reason being is if I think of my quote-unquote bullish playbook, what do I like to do when I'm looking for a stock to trade higher? Well, I like to trade daily squeezes. I like to trade hourly squeezes, 4-hour squeezes. I like to buy dips into moving averages. Whatever that bullish playbook might be, that all works a heck of a lot better when that stock is trending above that 21 EMA on the weekly chart. Soon as we start to trade under that weekly 21, especially when the moving average starts to roll over, till that changes, you're looking at a structure here where the path of least resistance typically is going to be to the downside. So just based on my rules, if I was going to look for a trade in the direction of structure, in the direction of momentum, I would try to short the next big bounce on NVIDIA. But that's the key. Even if it doesn't fit my bullish criteria, I want to be really careful about considering getting short down here. Because if we put a minus sign in front of NVIDIA and we flip this chart upside down, well, now it looks really bullish. Look at the inverse chart of NVIDIA on the weekly chart. Now it would fit my bullish criteria. But I'm still going to be a little bit careful about buying it up here at these extensions. I'd rather wait for the pullback, then I'll jump in, looking for that push in a direction trend. And that's not really an NVIDIA thing. It's not even so much a semiconductor thing. That's just the market that we're in. For me, where this all changes, where I'll look to sell put credit spreads on NVIDIA for 40, 50 days out. We're going to look to get bullish on the Amazons and Googles, is when we're starting to get a few closes back above that 21 EMA on the weekly. And that, guys, is where we have to just say, okay, everyone's bearish. The narrative is bearish, but the structure is changing. And now I got to make adjustments. Meaning the day is going to come where we're going to get the shift. As soon as we get that shift, that's where we got to change up the game plan. If you look back at COVID, think of what was going on in the world April, May, June 2020. Like shit is shutting down left and right. You got people going out of businesses. People can't travel. Like, things are getting a little bit crazy. But at the peak of, call it negative news, we get a couple closes back above the weekly 21. Moving average turns a corner, starts pointing higher. Then we're playing an uptrend up until recently. But until that happens, as a general statement, I do think we trend lower. And that applies to the semiconductors, that applies to the NVIDIAs, the Teslas. But when that day comes, guys, don't buy into the narrative, because the narrative doesn't get any better. The narrative will get better right around here. Food for thought, but good questions here, good questions. Fly Guy, good question. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of the 10x bars because, reason being is in terms of generating, my entry signal, that's based on, these arrows I'm using here, which take a few different things into consideration. However, these do take into consideration the 10x bars. So again, if I'm going to get my daily buy signal, now I need my weekly and my daily 10x bars. Got to make sure they're jiving. Can't say I've spent too much time, though, with the early in and out. So really haven't given that one a fair shake. Hey, good morning, Nick. Hope you had a great weekend. Tesla. The same discussion, guys, we just had about NVIDIA. Because remember, it's nothing to do with the company, the stock. It's just the structure. Same thought process here on Tesla. When we're above that weekly 21, and that weekly 21 is pointing higher, the only thing I want to look to do is get positioned bullish. So give me pullbacks, give me some nice squeezes under the weekly 21. Until that changes, I got to think the path of least resistance can continue to be lower. So Tesla's got some work cut out for it here, because what it's trying to avoid is this weekly squeeze firing short. So we've gone 1240 to 800, but if that fires short, we can go much lower. Again, back here, we wouldn't want to think, okay, Tesla's gone from 300 to 600. There's just no way the stock can trade higher. Weekly squeeze is trying to communicate, I might be ready for 5 to 8 plus weeks of some nice movement higher. So I think as long as Tesla is under that weekly 21 around 920-ish, I would be leaning into shorting the bounces. Soon as that all changes, I'll change up that game plan. What I can tell you, though, big level of support here is going to be that 750 for Tesla. Technically, right, based on the rule book, we're still looking at a picture-perfect monthly chart. Structure is still completely intact. Trend is still completely intact. Right? That 21 EMA is not rolling over. And we still have green 10x bars. So this, guys, is the importance of bigger time frames. Because I would look to short the next bounce on Tesla, but now I have some context. I got some context that in terms of like the biggest time frame we tend to focus on, that's a huge level of support. Keep that in mind. Now, if you look at the S&P 500, we're breaking under that monthly 21. So now you lose momentum. Now you lose structure. That's where it can all trade much lower. So with that being said, at the end of this month, you get Tesla trading under 750. Understand the significance. Your daily chart's been obliterated. You've got a bearish weekly squeeze coiled up. And then if we can start to shift the monthly trend, that's where things get interesting. All in due time, we'll find out. Hey, good morning, Flaming Giraffe. I like that name, ENLC. Take a peek at this one. All right, so we got daily squeeze. We've got some early buy signals. So we want to keep it simple. This has been printing the buy signal since January. And you'll notice as a general statement since January, done most of its trading above that daily 21 EMA. So all you would look for here is for that theme to continue. If those two pieces of the puzzle can remain, one, we're above that 21 EMA, and then two, you get that shift in momentum. Notice how that histogram basically stays positive from January up until now, up until pretty much last week. So for that to continue, you're looking for similar structure. So what pushes this stock higher for the last 5 months? It's that steady price action above that 21 EMA with your positive histogram. So where that behavior is all liable to come to an end is if this starts to trade under the 21 EMA and that histogram continues to shift in favor of the bears. So if I was looking to buy this one, that's all I'd ask from it. Let's get a little pop back above that 21. Let's get that histogram shifting back towards light blue. Then we should continue to be rocking and rolling here. Hey, good morning, my friend. Good question. Good question. If you log into your dashboard, so head to the dashboard, and to answer your question, yes, the recordings are up there because I went back and watched Henry's. If you go into your dashboard on the Simpler website, then go to your My Classes tab, you should see John's workshop. Click on that tab, then you should see the recordings towards the bottom of that page. Should be good to go. Hey, good morning, Neil. Yeah, great call out, Neil. Let me see, JPC. Good call out. Good call out. So here's what I actually like about this. We got a good structure. We have the daily squeeze. We don't quite have that momentum just yet. Histogram's still negative. We don't have the green 10x bars just yet. However, a lot of times that can serve as a nice early entry. If this just continues to hold above that 21, you can start scaling into that position, potentially getting in here before it all starts to heat up. Compared to the market, that's some relative strength. That's some relative strength right there. All right, guys, last one here before we jump into the gold room. London Perignon, Airbnb. For Airbnb, for the same reasons, I gave you my current game plan for a name like a Tesla, a name like an NVIDIA. As long as this is under that weekly 21, I'd look at short bounces. And again, be careful thinking. London, this doesn't apply to you, but just kind of speaking in general terms here. it's gone from 220 to 120. It's a pretty good haircut. But anytime we're under that weekly 21 squeeze, always have potential for much more downside. So under the weekly 21, I'd be looking at the short bounces there. But all right, guys, good crowd this morning. Good crowd. As always, I appreciate your time. Hope you found a little bit of it helpful. For those of you in the options room, I'll be on the mic in a few minutes. And before I leave, guys, I want to leave you with two things. One, if you don't have the Stack DMAs label here for the Thinkorswim platform, what y'all can do, I'll put this in the chat here, is go to the Focus Trades website, sign up for the free newsletter. Make sure I gave you guys the right link. Yep, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, go to the Focus Trades website, guys. Sign up for the free newsletter. Upon signing up, you should get an email sent to you with the script for the weekly and the daily stack DMAs. And then one more piece of housekeeping here. If y'all would like to hang out for another 30 or so minutes today, I will be in the free room. Let me get this link for you guys. I'll be in our free room today on the mic at 10 a.m. Central. So I'll put that link in there as well. See you guys there. But all right, y'all, I'll let you loose. I'll be back on Wednesday, same time, same channel.